Hello everybody. This is another video, a road video. This video is entitled From Jellico to LaFollette. We're coming into the middle of Jellico from Elk Valley. We're coming from Stanfield, came down through Elk Valley, through Newcomb, and now we're in Jellico. At the traffic light, we'll be getting on the old 25W from Jellico to LaFollette. It's approximately 24 miles through the mountains. From this location, as you can see, the clouds are always beautiful around this part of the country. We have clear weather most of the time. And this is one of those days where you can see almost forever. Which reminds me of the song by Robert Goulet, "On a Clear Day You Can See Forever." There's not a lot I can jabber about on this video. To the left, we're coming into a community over when we top over this hill. They call it Crouches Creek. My sister back is either the 40s, I'd say it was in the 40s. She lived in Crouches Creek, and we used to come to visit her. There was a big hill beside of her house. She lived on the left-hand side. And that winter, there was always snow on the ground in my mind. And we had a big hill that we would ride sleighs. I can remember that was one of the best winters that I can remember. We had an absolute blast. Back then, this was not grown up like it is now with businesses because of Interstate 75, and we're going to go under Interstate 75. That was long before the interstate system was even thought about, probably. I'm recording this video on June 15th, 2019, and I'm doing this audio portion on the 19th of June, 2019. And I will entitle this video From Jellico to LaFollette. As I said before, a lot of this audio that I'm placing on this video is just me jabbering to have an audio track with the video. And if I can think of a few things to speak of, I will. This straightaway, I can remember coming down through here with my dad, and if you got behind a slow-moving vehicle, you could always pass when you came to this long straightaway. I had something I was going to mention, and well, if I think of it, I'll pass it along to you. There will not be a lot of wisdom in it, whatever it is. there's not a lot that I can say about this road. This was called the Dixie Highway. This highway was a concrete highway when it was first constructed. I have a video somewhere on one of my YouTube accounts. They bypassed, it must have been back in the 60s or the 50s, when the road went kind to the right and down below and turned, and in other words, they bypassed a pretty bad part of the highway. I can remember trucks turning over, but I have a video where the outcropping of this road, the original road, 25W, and you can see the concrete. And I have a video that I did, a short one. It's on either this YouTube account. I'm getting so many of these videos that sometimes I have to stop and think. On this account, I have close to 700 videos. All of them are not public, but I have so many that, and I'm the world's worst for cataloging anything. I've always used my memory to know where everything was at, but when you start getting my age, your memory starts to go out the window. So although I know I have a video out there showing that outcropping of the original 25W, I can't remember what the title of the video is. I'm sure I have it public. But that's called planning ahead. But when you start doing these voiceovers, unless you have a script and you just think it out before you start, the way I'm doing them, it's totally ad lib. I have not placed anything on paper. I'm just looking at a small image of the video in my video editor and jabbering. That's why my commentary is so convoluted. Before doing this video, that other video that I just mentioned was the farthest thing from my mind until I started looking at the playback and doing this audio portion. I have 3 separate clips that I had to pull together in my editor, and I'm hoping that they came together to the point to where it doesn't lock up on me like it did yesterday when I was doing one of the videos. When they have a rock slide or something like that on Interstate 75, a lot of times they'll route the traffic through 25W. I also have a video that I did when they had the rock slide on 75 and they routed a lot of traffic through Highway 25W. Excuse me. Get my soft drink. They routed traffic one way. They routed the traffic southbound. There was if I can remember while I'm doing the commentary, if we come up on that curve, there was an 18-wheeler that wrecked. and the driver was killed, and the guy in the sleeper survived. And he gave me a comment on one of my videos talking about that accident. I think he lives in California. But when that slide occurred, there was bumper-to-bumper traffic on this road to LaFollette. When I think back, when we lived up at Anthrace on Highway 90, you get on Highway 90 down at Morley. But my grandmother lived in Jellico, so we were on this road umpteen times. And back then, when you'd go across Peabody Mountain, it's hard to believe how the diesel tractors on the 18-wheelers can go over these mountains. Back then, the trucks that came through this part, I can remember one company, it was called Huber and Huber. Their trucks were blue and orange. And the way they would do, of course, they were all gasoline, had gasoline engines. But the way they would do is they had a throttle. And in the summertime, the driver would stand out on the running board of the truck and pull his throttle, and they would go across Peabody Mountain standing outside of the truck on the running board until they could get some fresh air. It's strange how you remember things that you saw when you were a kid. Even up into the 1960s, coming from Jellico to LaFollette was a drudgery because of the traffic. And then once Interstate 75 was up and running, why, it relieved all the traffic from this area. That was Highway 90 to the left. That goes up into Anthrace and Egan. And we went through the community of Morley. As I drink my Dr. Pepper and do this commentary on this video from Jellico to LaFollette, I have a video called Jellico Road, and it's going in the opposite direction to Jellico. And I don't believe I have a video going south. Excuse me. I really have a mic switch on this. I'm using what they call a Blue Yeti. It's a USB microphone, and it was developed primarily for vlogging. And it's a pretty good microphone. And I was thinking, if I was doing a commentary on the radio, I would have a mic switch, and when I was working in radio, you would always click that mic, and use, like I just did. And then I got to checking the Blue Yeti. I'm going to click it here. It's got an on and off switch. So if I wanted to make some noise, I could click it off like that. So I do have a mic switch. So from now on, when I get all choked up or something, I'll just turn the mic off, clear my throat, and come back. Pretty good feature. This Blue Yeti microphone, if you're planning on doing any video vlogs, I could recommend it. It has an omnidirectional setting. It has a cardioid. It has a stereo setting. So it would suffice for about anything you were going to do on YouTube or anything on the internet. If you wanted to do it for an interview microphone and you didn't want to have a microphone for each person, it has a figure 8 pattern which gives you a cardioid on both sides. As we continue down Dixie Highway to the south, Highway 25W, this video is from Jellico to LaFollette. Years ago when I was working in Oak Ridge, some of those people down there that we had a group, we would ride bicycles after work. Sometimes after work in Oak Ridge, we'd ride 40, 45 miles after work. And one of the favorite rides to most of my friends down in Bechtel, or at Oak Ridge, yeah, it's Bechtel, that's who I worked for, they would come up to my house in LaFollette when I lived in LaFollette, and we would ride to Jellico and back. And it was one of their favorite rides. We would usually ride on a Saturday, and there was not a lot of traffic on this road on a Saturday. This was after the strip mines had more or less stopped operating, so we didn't have to worry about a lot of coal trucks or anything like that. It was a lot of fun. I'll tell you a little story, and the person that I'm not going to mention any names, but the odds of this story registering as being them is probably kind of far-fetched. But anyway, there was a young couple. Both of them were civil engineers, and they came to work for Bechtel. And they were bicycle riders like myself, and we rode together a lot. The first time they came up to ride, he and his wife came up and they rode with us. When we went over Peabody Mountain, she fell behind, and we would occasionally slow down to wait on her. Her husband was in the main group going up the mountain, so we would wait on her. Well, I don't know if it was the second or third time we rode to Jellico. She came up to ride with us, and he wasn't with her. I think they had been setting us up. Well, I'm here to tell you, when we hit Peabody Mountain, she was one of the first ones over the top. I'll tell you, that was funny. I thought, well, we've been had. She was unreal. And that used to happen a lot down in Oak Ridge. Somebody new would come along and ride. And for whatever the reason, they would, I guess it had to do with who they were with or whatever. But that happened to me more than once. And the reason I laugh, it was always a female. And you know how you are. You don't want to run off and leave some of your partners you're riding with out on the road. So I did that 2 or 3 times, and then either the second or third time they rode with us would run off and leave me. I got a big laugh out of it. I thought it was funny. But when you're working in a situation like that and you have people coming from all over the world, some of them, if they are cross-country bicyclists, most of them are great bike riders, which I found out the hard way. I thought I was king of the mountain until this one girl. This is not the one that I'm telling you about previously, but there was another girl that rode with us, and she was a civil engineer. And she would, first couple of times, she'd kind of, like she couldn't keep up with you. And then one day after work, 2 or 3 of us rode with her, and she dusted us up a hill. She left us, I tell you. But I find all of that amusing. To me, it was funny. As we continue, I don't know if you like that story or not, but as I say, I'm doing a voiceover for this video, and as these things pop in my mind, I'm just going to mention them. I don't ride a bicycle anymore. Here, when I moved from LaFollette, I had a Swin Tiempo. When my wife purchased that for me for a birthday present when I was working in Oak Ridge. I can't remember what year it was, but it was in the late 80s or early 90s. And I don't know how many miles I put on that bicycle, but it was a 12-speed racing bike. Now, I may be off on the price, but I believe she paid more than $300 for that bicycle, brand new. And when we moved from LaFollette, I gave it to the shepherd's home. And when the guys came out to pick it up, I told them, I said, now this bicycle is probably worth as much or more than it was when I purchased it, so don't let it go for nothing, because, I considered that it was worth at least $225. I don't know who purchased it, and I don't want to know, but I could no longer ride a bicycle. And the reason I couldn't is because the older I got, the more my equilibrium, if I can say it correctly, equilibrium, started to wane, and I could still ride, but I didn't feel comfortable out on the road by myself, and I'd gotten to the point where I had no one to ride with, and I just didn't like to be out there by myself. So, but I placed thousands of miles on that 12-speed Swin Tiempo. I would ride from the Sugarland welcome station, I think it's called Sugarland, there in Gatlinburg. I would ride from there across the Smokies to Cherokee, and I would only get off of my bicycle at the top, up at Newfound Gap. The first time that I rode that and I was coming down off of the Smokies, some of the automobiles were starting to back up behind me because I never was a real good descender. Some guys could just turn it loose and let it go. I could not. So what I did when I would get to Newfound Gap, one day I was coming across the Smokies, and I stopped up on Newfound Gap on top on 441, and this huge motorhome came over. And what I did is I got right on his bumper, and I followed him all the way to Gatlinburg. And if you follow a motorhome or an 18-wheeler on a racing bike, you don't have to pedal. If you can get in their draft, they'll pull you down the road. And I have been with groups, and an 18-wheeler would come by, and we would get in their draft. And if they were going 35, 40 miles an hour, they'd pull you up to 40 miles an hour. A lot of the people that I rode with, they would drop, okay, when we would ride and come down Peabody Mountain, they would turn it loose. I could never do that. I could keep a decent pace. But when it come to descending on my bicycle, and I guess it had to do with my equilibrium. It never was really up to par, and I would never turn it loose. So when I could stay with most of the people going up Peabody Mountain, but going down, I couldn't stay with them. They'd run off and leave me because I wouldn't maintain that pace. Everybody that I rode with could they could let it fly down these mountains. One guy I rode with, we went to Middlesboro back when it was the old highway, and when we topped over the mountain there by Cudjoe's Cave, he was passing automobiles. He must have been going 60 miles an hour on his bicycle. There's no way I could do that. But I can still see him topping the mountain there by Cudjoe's Cave. And he did not let up. He was passing automobiles down that mountain. Scary. I could not do it. Well, I sure have gotten into a big jabbering way this morning on this video, but I didn't know a whole lot to say other than just jabber some of the things that I was talking about. And I'm going to use my mic switch here. Turn it off for a minute. Back. We're getting ready to go under the railroad here at Duff. My dad used to work in a coal mine off to the right. It was Rex. He said that was the most dangerous mine that he was ever in, was Rex. I think they had a lot of accidents over there on that mine. Deep mine. We're going under the CSX on 25W. Up here at the top of the hill, you turn left and go up on the mountain to McLeod Mountain Restaurant, and I started to call it a motel. It's not really a motel. They have condominiums up there you can rent. I've always thought it would be fun if you knew heavy snow was forecast and go up there and spend the weekend if it would snow, especially on the top floor. If you've never been up there, the view is just, especially on a clear day, when you can see forever. Like today, if you were up there, you could see the Smokies clear as a bell. But it's beautiful up there. I don't know a lot to say about this road. Most of these places, like on any road that you're on, these communities have names. I entitled this video From Jellico to LaFollette. At the same time I did this video, I let my video camera run, and I've been debating whether to do another video and call it From LaFollette to Jacksboro. I've been down that way so many times, I may let this be the final video that I recorded. I recorded these videos on the 15th of June, and I'm doing all this jabbering on the 19th of June. But this was a great bike riding road. And it wasn't that difficult. You would think that it would be a difficult road. But it really wasn't that difficult to ride to Jellico. And when you're riding, I think most of the time when we rode up through here, we had no less than 10 people in the group. And what makes it easier when you're riding with a group, especially if you have some young people with you that are really strong, is you can get in the pack and draft, and they kind of more or less pull you along. I could always get by with getting into the back of the pack and letting them pull me along because of my age. I was always older than any of these folks. Most of them were in their 20s, and when I was riding with them, I was in my 50s. So I was the old guy in the bunch. Those were the days, and I don't look back on those days with sadness. I'm glad that I was able to do what I did on a bicycle, and the fun that I had and the people that I met, that I worked with in Oak Ridge. But time waits on no one, and you just move on to something else. And that something else for me is jabbering on YouTube, talking about it. To me, it's better than placing music. And then some of you all that watch this video might say, well, I'd rather hear music than to hear you jabbering. Well, that's what they have a volume control for. You can turn it off. I just can't put one of these videos out there and have it sterile to the point to where it's just a video with nothing behind it. So that's the reason that I do these voiceovers. And this one's long. It's already 34 minutes long, but it's getting ready to end. And we'll end in downtown LaFollette. But this will give you a good visual of Highway 25W from Jellico to LaFollette or LaFollette to Jellico. I have one out there called Jellico Road. Some of my earlier videos I was using a JVC camcorder, and now all of my road videos are recorded with a GoPro. A Hero 3 Black set at 1920, 1080p, super wide, 60 frames per second. And as you all know, the GoPro uses a fisheye. You cannot set the lens setting on a GoPro. Everything is electronic, and I've said this before. That's the reason when you go by a telephone pole, it bends, and you get the wrong perspective of speed. It looks like you're going down the road a million miles an hour. But if you look off in the distance and see how slow it goes from one telephone pole to the other, then you'll realize that I'm really not going that fast. And you can use the space bar, and with that 40 frames per second, you can stop one of those cars coming by, and if they don't have tinted windshield and it's somebody you know, you'll know who they are. That's how clear this GoPro records. I thank you all very much for watching my videos. I have my comments section opened, but I approve all comments. Anymore, when you're on YouTube worldwide, now some people, that's a part of their YouTube life. They like all the crazy comments and everything. But on road videos and things like that, I have to approve the comments because I only want to respond or have comments concerning the visuals and people who live away that like to see what LaFollette looks like, or Campbell County. I hope my videos gives you the ability to show some of your friends that you live with in other states, or some of your children that have never been here, what it looks like. So we're going down into LaFollette, and I'm going to say so long, everybody. Thank you very much for watching my videos and listening to my jabbering. Bye-bye.